This is my July 2024 stem cell video blog update. I'm now in the 9th year of my quest to vanquish whole body osteoarthritis with regenerative medicine, and while I have fought valiantly, so far it's been mostly a losing battle. I have degenerative joint disease in virtually all of my joints and degenerative disc disease at many levels of my spine. It started in 2006, that's 18 years ago now, and it threatens my ability to exercise, which is everything to me. That's the crux of my battle. I'm fighting to save exercise. I discovered regenerative medicine with mesenchymal stem cells in 2015, and I was enraged to learn that the FDA had recently won a landmark case against a company called Regenerative Sciences, which is now known as Regenexx, effectively banning the stem cell procedure I need in the United States. And this decision was a critical setback for me. So I made it my mission in life to get access to it outside the country. Since 2016, I've had 13 regenerative medicine procedures with mesenchymal stem cells and platelet-rich plasma. Each of these procedures involve treating many joints, usually dozens at a time. Total, that's hundreds of biologic joint injections. Most of these treatments were with Regenexx. In particular, I've sought treatment at their facility in the Cayman Islands where they do advanced procedures with a patient's own stem cells. So far, my campaign to regenerate all my joints with stem cells has been mostly unsuccessful. My goal has always been to treat all the joints that are affected, but that's an extremely tall order because there's so many. One obvious thing that makes that so hard is the financial burden of that. Just treating the first joint with an advanced stem cell procedure costs about $20,000. Then there are the medical complications. In my case, the highest priority anatomy is difficult and risky to inject, and only the most specialized doctors can do those injections. Then I'm limited by the number of stem cells I can get from out of my own bone marrow. Given those complications, I haven't been able to treat all the joints that need it. Even having had about 300 to 500 joint injections, I still have a handful of key joints that are untreated. The results of the procedures I've had have been mixed. I have had some that worked very well, and I've even seen definite cartilage regeneration in some joints. That's the holy grail of arthritis treatment, but it hasn't worked that well consistently, and I've had a lot of treatments where the results were just weak and transient. I believe my own actions were responsible for some of those suboptimal outcomes because I've repeatedly failed to adhere to appropriate post-procedure activity restrictions. Therefore, my own actions tend to undo the treatments. There was one instance I'm certain of in 2019 where I did something stupid and it completely botched a major stem cell procedure. The only question is how many other times that happened. I do truly believe that I've benefited from these procedures and that I'm better off today than I would have been without them, but they still haven't been enough to prevent an overall decline. I had a very bad setback in 2019. There was an incident that badly aggravated my joints. I never recovered from that. So since I started getting the treatments in 2016, the overall worsening has outpaced the improvement. And that's just the reality of having so many joints that need treatment. My resources have been spread out too thin, both in terms of my financial resources and the stem cells we're injecting. I had my first stem cell procedure in February 2017 at Regenexx Cayman. We treated about a dozen of what were then my worst joints with millions of my own stem cells that were expanded in their laboratory. I had a very successful outcome from that procedure. I saw definite cartilage regeneration in my finger joints and also in my right shoulder. Felt like I grew a new shoulder joint. It was truly remarkable. In other joints, I'm not sure I saw that same structural improvement, but I still got massive pain relief pretty much everywhere. It was practically curative in my right sacroiliac joint, which hasn't hurt me since. So that procedure gave me parts of my life back. But 2 years later, in 2019, there was a cruel plot twist in the story when, 10 weeks out from my second stem cell procedure, I did something catastrophically stupid. And that misstep on my part not only botched that procedure, it caused mass joint damage everywhere. I called that incident the catastrophe because that was the downhill turning point in my battle with this condition, where after that, the worsening really started to accelerate. And by 2020, I was in a lot of pain again, especially in my spine, and I was desperate to get another stem cell procedure. But just as I was in the process of moving forward with that, COVID hit, and the Cayman Islands closed its borders for more than 2 years, so I couldn't get back to the clinic. In that time, 2020 and 2021, I had 8 procedures with platelet-rich plasma in the US to treat a lot of joints. I'm ambivalent about those procedures. They did work well in a minority of joints, like in my hands, but in most other joints, I didn't see that same night and day difference. It might have had a more subtle benefit, but it was difficult to discern. Then in 2022, just as the Cayman Islands was finally opening up again, I had an episode of crippling indecision about what clinic to go with, and I spent about 6 to 8 months agonizing over that decision. I talked to a lot of different clinics all over the world, mainly umbilical stem cell clinics in Latin America and black market clinics in the US doing illegal stem cell procedures here. I drove everybody, including myself, nuts with my indecision. Finally, in late 2022, I decided to move forward with the original plan to get treatment at Regenexx Cayman. And by that point, I was just exhausted with regenerative medicine. I had a little film crew from Germany accompany me through that treatment experience, and they included my story in a little docuseries that aired in Germany last year that didn't do very well. I'm going to put a link to that film in the description. I had a massive stem cell procedure focused on the spine. We treated 93 joints, mostly in the spine, but also some in the hands and feet. And then we just ran out of stuff to inject before we could hit all the joints I wanted to get to. I had a very rocky recovery from that procedure. Once again, I struggled to adhere to the recommended rehab protocols, which said don't lift more than 5 pounds for 6 weeks. A lot easier said than done when your name is me. I didn't do anything quite as dramatically stupid as what I did in 2019 to botch my last procedure, but the little everyday things really got me. I struggled to avoid things like bending at the waist or lifting more than 5 pounds because I don't live in assisted living and I don't have servants around me to do everything for me. The joints I just treated were hypersensitive and every little thing I did aggravated them. 6 months out from that procedure, I thought it had failed. Once again, my own actions were implicated in that.
So pick up a 20-pound box off the ground 2 weeks after the procedure, you fucktard.
Now I'm about 21 months out from that procedure, and I think 90% of the injections did work by the standard that they produced a significant degree of pain relief. Say the joints got at least 30% better. But even despite those improvements, I still have a lot of pain in all these areas of my body because we couldn't inject all the pain generators that needed it, nor was it curative in the joints we did get to. One of the joints, the L5S1 disc, actually got worse following the procedure. So even though most of the individual injections helped, the procedure as a whole wasn't as impactful as I had hoped, and I feel kind of ambivalent about it now. I am grateful for the improvements I got, which are significant. Note how I said I think 90% of the joints got better. That's because my pain being as complex as it is, that is, I have a lot of closely associated joints that hurt in areas of my body like the spine, it can be hard to tell the exact impact of any one injection or treatment because I never have an exact before and after snapshot of the pain and the other symptoms. What I can say is that 6 months out from the procedure, I thought it had failed, so I definitely wasn't suffering from a placebo effect at that point. Then about a year out, I started to perceive a turning point. And now I'm more than a year and a half out, and there's been a definite change in my overall quality of life. I'm still in pain, but I'm a lot more engaged in life now. I used to just want to lay down and zone out all the time because of the pain. Now I'm always engaged in something. I'm always working on some project. I don't know that the stem cells are the reason for that difference, but there is a difference. At the conclusion of that film project I was a part of, at a point in time when I wasn't feeling very good about the treatment outcome to that point, the German TV host asked me if it was worth it. My answer was, hell yes, it was worth it, even if it doesn't work, because what else am I going to do? Just sit at home and rot and be on 80 different medications? No, if there's something out there that even has an outside chance to restore my health, I'm going to go to the end of the earth to try to get it. And even if it doesn't work, I have no regret that I'm the kind of person who would do that. That's what I have to do to be who I am. So having had all that treatment over the last 8 years, my status in July of 2024 is I still wrestle with serious chronic pain on a daily basis. It's very negatively impacting my ability to work. I am stronger than I was 2 years ago before that last procedure, but I'm still on very shaky grounds. All it takes is one good flare-up to shut me down. I have a very worrisome pain in my upper cervical area, and this is now the leading area of pain. It was completely unaddressed by the 2022 Cayman procedure, and that leads me to believe it's something we didn't inject while I was down there. My hands are messed up again. I had PRP in my hands last 3 years ago, and it worked well at the time, but that's wearing off now. My hands are going to need treatment again soon. And most significantly to me, my condition severely restricts my ability to exercise. I can only do the most conservative training anymore, and I'm just clinging to that by a thread. Look how atrophied my poor forearms are. It's because I can't do any kind of gripping action with my hands. Is my situation precarious? I don't know, I guess so. I don't think of it like that, but I'm clearly on a very negative trajectory here. I've made a huge investment in regenerative medicine, and it hasn't turned the situation around. I've just kept going downhill over the years. I feel like I hit the iceberg 18 years ago, and now my hull is mostly underwater, and I'm still sinking. But when you're in a bad spot, don't think about how bad it is. Just think about what you're going to do to fight it, what course of action you're going to take, whether it's regenerative medicine or anything else. And I do intend to get more regenerative medicine procedures. But you might protest, as several doctors have recently. If it hasn't worked well, then why would I continue doing it? Well, it's not that it doesn't work. Again, I've seen that it can work very well. It's just that there are a lot of complications, particularly related to having so many joints that need treatment and my propensity to botch the treatments after the fact. Moreover, regenerative medicine is just all that there is, as far as I'm concerned. Standard of care medicine has nothing when it comes to treating joint disease, nothing except just masking the pain. The end game for this upper cervical bullshit is an upper cervical fusion. That's where they bolt the base of your skull to your neck and your head is just frozen in place like a statue for the rest of your life. That's unimaginable to me. So to give up on regenerative medicine, that's tantamount to accepting that I'm just going to keep getting worse and eventually have to stop working and stop exercising. And that's unacceptable if there's something I can do about it. I'm hopeful there are things I can do, particularly in terms of aftercare, to help these procedures work better in the future. My problem in 2024 is that there are no clinics anywhere that can meet my needs because they all either can't get enough stem cells to treat so many joints or they can't do the joint work I need. I discovered some new anatomy last year. It's called the atlanto-odontoid joint. I believe it's causing the pain in my upper cervical area. It's one of the articulations of C1, C2, the highest two vertebrae, and it's an interesting joint. It's like a little pivot joint that your head swivels on to permit cervical rotation. It's a crucial joint. And what's unique about this joint is that, unlike all the other cervical facets, this one resides ventral to or in front of the spinal cord. So you can't inject it from the posterior side of the neck like you can all the other cervical facets because the spinal cord is in the way. The only way to inject the atlanto-odontoid joint is to go through the mouth and through the back of the throat. And that's high risk because of the proximity to the spinal cord. An infection in that area could be lethal, or the injection could paralyze you. There's only one clinic anywhere in the world that's technically sophisticated enough to do that injection. It's the Centeno Schultz Clinic in Broomfield, Colorado, the Regenex headquarters. They call it the PICL procedure, percutaneous implantation of cervical ligaments. Except in my case, we're not going to treat the ligaments. It's just going to be a through-the-mouth intra-articular injection. So imagine that your only function in life is to be an exercise specialist, and you have a fucked up medical condition that cuts you off from exercise, and there's only one clinic anywhere in the world that can treat you. Well, that's the predicament I find myself in. And because this clinic operates in the United States, they can only give you the type of stem cell procedure that's legal here. That's autologous bone marrow concentrate, aka stem cells from your own bone marrow that have not been expanded. And that's great stuff. I'm a big supporter of it, even though I've never had it before. But the limitation of it is it only yields a relatively small quantity of stem cells. In the US, you cannot expand the cells. Now, I've already had 3 bone marrow aspirations since 2016, and there's been a huge drop in my bone marrow stem cell counts. My first one in 2016 produced a stout yield, but then when I had my second one in 2019, there was this huge drop, and we don't know why. And it didn't pick up again when I had my third one in 2022. This might represent a change in my overall health status, in which case it'll probably never recover, but it might also just be local depletion, and we're hoping for the latter. So when I get the PICL procedure, the doctor's going to try an unorthodox technique of drawing bone marrow called a long axis draw to try to harvest stem cells from a region of the bone that hasn't been depleted yet. But we don't know if that's going to work. And if it doesn't, then the PICL procedure is probably going to fail because my bone marrow concentrate's not going to contain enough stem cells. And even if we do get enough stem cells to treat the atlanto-odontoid joint, we're not going to get enough to treat anything beyond that. And I have a lot of joints in need of treatment. And so if I want to treat all those joints at the same time and in the same place, which is highly desirable for economic reasons, I have to rely on platelet-rich plasma, or PRP, to treat all the other joints. PRP is the other major biologic agent used in regenerative medicine. It's based on your body's own platelets, which can promote healing, and it's much more accessible than stem cells, but not as potent. I've had it many times, and I'm a big fan of it. I would get a whole body once over with it every 6 months if I could, but for me, it's more like maintenance than a fix. It works well for a few months or years, but those improvements seem to break down and dissipate over time as the joints are exposed to higher forces. It also seems to work, at least for me, better in some joints than in others. I haven't had much success with it in my feet, for example. So if I want to do what I really want to do and treat all my joints with stem cells to get a more reliable long-term improvement, I have to split my treatments up into different clinics. I have to treat the atlantoodontoid joint in Colorado with bone marrow concentrate, and then I have to choose another clinic outside the US that can culture expand stem cells. That's where the cells are grown in a laboratory to greater numbers. That's the step that's illegal in the United States. The clinic I want to work with for culture expansion is Regenexx Cayman, the same clinic I've always worked with. And this is the only clinic in the world I know of that works with culture expanded stem cells that's orthopedically specialized and does high-level interventional orthopedics. That's the discipline focused on image-guided injections into the musculoskeletal system. They culture expand stem cells from your own bone marrow, and they do very high-quality orthopedic stem cell procedures. The problem is, I assume I'm likely to run into the same problem that I've had in the past with the decline in my bone marrow stem cell counts, where even with expansion, I'm doubtful we'll get enough cells to treat as many joints as I want. The alternative would be to go with a clinic that uses allogeneic stem cells, meaning stem cells from a donor, and I'm not excited about that either. Most clinics that work with allogeneic stem cells use ones from donated umbilical tissue like Wharton's jelly. I call those umbilical stem cell clinics. Those clinics are all the rage right now on social media, and so you might wonder why I don't go with one of them. Well, it's because, in my opinion, the umbilical stem cell clinics can't do the extent or quality of joint injections I need. At least I don't have the confidence in them to. When I talked to the umbilical stem cell clinics in 2022, none of them could inject all the joints I need, and they weren't using proper image guidance consistently, and a lot of them wanted to steer me into a stem cell IV, which I don't believe in for orthopedic purposes. And so those issues highlight a disagreement I have with their overall approach. So the umbilical stem cell clinics just aren't a good fit for me. Now, several other clinics have recently appeared on my radar screen that use allogeneic bone marrow-derived stem cells, and that's highly unusual in and of itself. But what's even more unusual about these clinics is that they do appear to be orthopedically specialized. They're not treating a huge range of conditions with stem cells, they're just doing some form of interventional orthopedics, and that's what I need. One of these clinics is in Spain, the other is in the Bahamas. But I've only recently discovered them, and I haven't had a chance to investigate them thoroughly yet, nor am I actively pursuing that right now because I'm focused on treating the atlantoodontoid joint next. And that I'm certain you can only do in Colorado. And so as far as I know, in 2024, I'm fucked. There are no clinics anywhere in the world that can fix me. And as if the medical complications weren't enough, there's another factor blocking me from moving forward with any kind of high-stakes regenerative medicine procedure right now. I'm currently serving as the primary caretaker for my 80-year-old father. He's bedridden, not ever going to recover, and I've been trying to take care of him at home for as long as possible. This situation is putting way too much strain on my joints for me to be able to get any kind of expensive regenerative medicine procedure right now, because I know from experience that anytime I get a stem cell procedure, I have to take it very easy on the joints during the first few months after. If I do too much too soon, it's going to botch the procedure, and I can't have that. So I have to wait for a resolution to this situation before I can do anything. I don't know how much longer this is going to go on. My goal is to get it wrapped up within the next year. And by the way, I've only been able to afford all this treatment over the last 8 years because in 2016, I moved back in with my dad to save money for stem cell procedures. And so as long as I'm still living here, I can't get any more treatments because I have to take care of him. But then once I'm relieved of my caretaking duties, I won't likely be able to live here anymore, hence won't be able to save nearly as much money toward future procedures. So I'm really at an impasse with regenerative medicine here. I've already had a heroic amount of treatment, which hasn't worked as well as hoped. There are no clinics anywhere in the world that can manage my condition, and now my support system is waning. So my reality is, at this point in my life, most of my treatment opportunities are likely behind me unless something changes. And I'm going to have to make some hard decisions about my treatment future. Am I going to continue going all in on these procedures, depleting myself financially when the likelihood that I'm ever going to get better really seems quite remote at this point? Or am I going to be financially conservative and accept that I'm never going to get better and that I'm going to get worse? That's a hard pill to swallow. There was a time in 2015 when I had first discovered stem cells when I would have spared no expense. I would have gone all out for the chance to ameliorate this evil condition from my body. But I'm not feeling that aggressive anymore because I've already thrown the sink at the problem and it hasn't worked as well as hoped. It worked moderately well about 2/3 of the time. The post-procedure recovery has been a minefield, and I haven't even been able to treat all the joints that need it. So I don't want to give up and throw in the towel, but I also don't want to be stupid and act like a desperate patient, just bankrupting myself on procedures that are not a good bang for the buck for me. What I really need to do is just up my game and make a lot more money so I can afford more procedures. That's easier said than done, but I have to try, otherwise I'm just not going to get the treatment I want. So what am I going to do? Well, I'm highly likely to pursue more regenerative medicine procedures, but I am going to have to be more conservative about it for the foreseeable future. That means I'm going to have to choose my treatments much more carefully. I'm going to have to manage my aftercare much better than in the past so I don't botch any more treatments, and I'm just going to have to get more mileage out of the joints I have now. I'm going to have to learn to live with my condition better, as much as I detest that. So this is the plot. I've been trying to put together a procedure with high-dose PRP to treat my hands locally, but I haven't been able to find a doctor who's willing to do the procedure I want. I want to hit all the joints of both hands at the same time, like I've done many times in the past. There's 2 doctors locally who do high-dose PRP, interventional orthopedics. One of them is the local Regenexx guy, and he has indicated that he's not willing to treat so many joints at once. He feels that's excessive. I disagree, but that's him. The other guy, non-Regenexx, first agreed to do the procedure, said it'd be no problem. Then he got my medical records back from Colorado and saw how much treatment I've already had, and he ghosted me. That's okay, no hard feelings. I guess it's just not a good fit. So it's not looking good for hand PRP until I can get on a plane again. And that's really the bottleneck here. I have to resolve this situation with my dad before I can do anything regenerative medicine wise. And that's a very tricky situation for family reasons. So I'm going to continue saving money for a while longer while I figure this out. And then when I'm in a position to travel again, I have my sights set on the PICL procedure, the stem cells through the mouth in Colorado to treat the atlantoodontoid joint. And then around the same time, I'm likely to choose another treatment for some of my other joints, but I don't know what that's going to be yet. It might be PRP at the same clinic in Colorado, or there might be another trip outside the US in there to treat other joints with stem cells. That would likely be to Regenexx Cayman, but it could also be somewhere like Spain or the Bahamas, even though those 2 options still seem pretty far out there right now. So this is regenerative medicine. This ain't a stem cell pedicure. This is real life. This is the pain, the hard decisions, the economic strain, the medical complications, the very real outcomes, the abject shit show that is the field of regenerative medicine, and the resilience in the face of overwhelming odds. This is the official BRG stem cell video blog.